Welcome back to War Thunder and welcome to the tank review on the FV4005 Stage 2, which is the recently added rank 4 battle rating 6.7 British tank destroyer. And to make it straight out, this is the tank in the game currently with the biggest gun. I don't expect it to change anytime soon. It has a lot of advantages and a lot of disadvantages. Of course, I will give you a full rundown on the statistics. I will give you tips and tricks how to make this vehicle work, but also how to take it out on the battlefield if you have to face it. And certain tactics that might surprise you. Furthermore, I will make a comparison this time, not throughout its major opponents on the battlefield, that has a reason to do with the firepower, but also other derp guns in the game. Now, this might be one of the easiest, but also one of the most complicated tank reviews that I've ever made up until this point so far, because how unique this vehicle is. This vehicle is a troll vehicle. This vehicle cannot perform very good by itself. It has to rely on its fear factor, its alpha strike, and certain tactics that you as the commander of this vehicle have to use to your advantage. In this respect, it's a little bit like a KV2. Everybody just runs away from you or tries to hide up until the point that you have fired your gun, and then a lot of people come screaming after you because you have such a long reload. In this respect, this tank might be more or less like a boom and zoom tank. Now, if you might be confused by this, I just want to clarify it a little bit here. I make this kind of comparison because of how unique this vehicle is. A boom and zoom aircraft, obviously there the comparison comes from, relies on positioning and superior energy. Again, superior positioning, and in this respect it then makes itself untouchable. In a tank, that is quite a long stretch of the imagination that you have to make. But again, you kind of get the sense. You have to put a lot of effort into positioning. You must not get into range of other more nimble tanks with shorter reloads and so on. And you also then have to make yourself untouchable by retreating into cover or let other team members take the shot for you. So that is quite a lot of rambling. I have to say, with this patch we also saw a rework of how hash works. The thing with this gun is that it simply is the biggest gun with one of the heaviest, if not the heaviest, shell in the game so far for a tank with a gun. That means this thing has quite a punch. All the more surprising is the relatively low battle rating, in my opinion, of 6.7. And I need to make the tank review on this to make a new introduction for the 6.7 tank review bracket that I wanted to finish quite a while ago. However, we saw again numerous changes to the game, and especially this vehicle is one of the main characters of the new age of 6.7, so to speak. This might sound like a bit of an exaggeration, but in fact this vehicle causes a lot of imbalance, and as powerful as it is, if there are too many of those tanks in your team, that might literally backfire on you. So without further ado, let's begin with the tank review itself. So let's begin with the armor, and the first thing that we notice is that this vehicle looks a little bit familiar for all you British tankers out there, because this is very closely related to the Conway, the FV4004. Especially the chassis is very similar. The shape of the turret is also very similar. The appearance from a distance might be very much the same. However, the chassis is from the Centurion Mark III as far as I can tell, and the lower plate has 76.2 millimeters of armor like the upper plate, but the lower plate is 44 degrees angled backwards. Effective thickness ranging between 115 to 135 degrees depending on the exact angle. Likewise for the upper plate, we range between 140 to 160 millimeters with a 61 degree angle. That is quite literally that the lower plate is the weak spot against lower penetrating AP rounds or APHE rounds. The upper plate is a bit more resistant, and you can cause a lot of ricochets due to the angle. This is the area where AP shells usually begin to bounce, especially lower caliber ones like 76, 75 millimeter rounds or 88 even. Around about 100 millimeter you always get penetrated. So heat, APDS and hash will go right through there. The side of the vehicle is 50.8 millimeters thick, and we have a little bit of overlay from the tracks, the road wheels, some spaced armor here in terms of some toolboxes, I guess, on both sides, by the way, and some 1 millimeter side skirts that will protect you maybe from HE rounds or from hash rounds. Not all of them, and we will come to this in a moment. So that is not very good side armor. The rear is 38 millimeters thick, not very impressive, but we have here some additional 15 millimeters of spaced armor, whatever this might be. Now we have some additional structural steel here, whatever that is. And the roof of the vehicle in the rear on the engine deck is 29 millimeters. That is actually pretty good. The front is 38, and that is excellent. That will protect you from HE hits on the here if somebody would shoot you in the turret. However, the explosion never gets so far because 14 millimeters of this huge massive turret all around, top, front, bottom, everywhere. And yeah, we have a little bit of gun breach here that might act as armor for the cost of getting the gun breach destroyed. And this is so thin that even heavy machine gun fire will begin to penetrate you. However, there is a trick. You can angle the turret. Oh, Napalm, you're so stupid, you can't angle it because this thing is flat. Oh, wait! First of all, if you angle it right, you have around about 20 millimeters at best for this front section here and this section here, and at a certain distance, around about 400 meters, you can't get penetrated anymore by 50 cals with even this weak armor if you angle your turret. And then we have two parts. First of all, there are a few things that I have to talk about the turret that quite confused me. First of all, the turret is so weak that I expected it to have hull break. However, it doesn't. We tried it. This has no hull break, as far as I can tell. At least from AP shells and even heat shells. You don't get hull break. The ZSU-57, which has 14.5 millimeters of armor on the turret, has hull break. So that is quite questionable. Where are the limitations of this, or will this get implemented later on? I don't know. Then furthermore, the turret can just rotate like 45 degrees to the right and 45 degrees to the left. That has to do with the recoil and so on. So let's have a look at the X-ray. We can see that we have 5 crew members. We have 1 driver. Here is no ammo rack that you are used to from your Centurion Mark IIIs and all variants of it. Then we also have the commander, the gunner, and 2 loaders. Funnily enough, there is a bug or a feature in War Thunder that tells you if there are 2 loaders and you are down to just 2 crew members, you have nearly the same reload as if you would have all crew members remaining, or 3 crew members. That is not the case with this one. I don't know if this was also reworked for other vehicles, but this one then gets a reload of nearly over a minute, and that is really long. Especially when you have fired, your gun breech gets damaged and you have to repair it. You need to repair the gun breech, then you can begin to reload. If you're then down to 2 crew members, that can take up to 2 minutes. So I think it's nearly better to just then bail out or to get into a cap circle and try to get a crew member back with the crew replenishment. Then we also have the fuel tanks, the engine, and the transmission all in the back. They actually don't blow up that much, but I do not really recognize that so often because everybody shoots in the turret, where we have our 12 warheads and 12 propellant charges. Funnily enough, what remains at the end are those 6 warheads and those 4 propellant charges if you're down to 4 shots. So they are there and they are there. So I guess this loader takes the warheads and this one is responsible for the propellant charges. One thing that I have to say is how resistant those warheads are to shrapnels and to any kind of damage, and you can even repair those warheads, which is quite surprising. I thought so far this is just a feature for ATGMs or rocket tanks, but I can be wrong. Correct me if you know it better. And then we also see this massive gun breach. It gets damaged with nearly every hit. However, the next thing is with this armor, it is quite surprising how much detonations you get when you get shot by tanks that normally one-shot something like this. Especially the German APHE shells, they have a fuse sensitivity of 28 millimeters. That means they don't get activated. You can shoot here with the Yak Tiger and inflict nearly no damage at all. Can you imagine? The same with the mouse. And then we come to the funny part that even heat shells, for example, from the secondary of the E100 and the mouse, or lower tier troll vehicles from the Germans, they can shoot here and hit the warheads numerous times and they don't blow up. And even Russians with their like 15 millimeters of fuse sensitivity, they don't get activated. You can see it is quite custom to aim for the flat part of an armor. Of the armor, but I recommend to shoot for the direct part where there's the ammunition. So when this tank is angled like this, don't shoot here. You should do this, for example, with the Conway, because then you can penetrate easily and you have enough armor to activate the fuse, but you took the flat part that let's not ricochet your shot. For this one, you have to choose this one, because you automatically then overmatch or have the armor interaction rule and then hit the ammo directly, then it might blow up. Or you go for the gun breach or the loaders to interrupt the reload, which is very painful for this vehicle. So yeah, the death of this vehicle are definitely AAAs of any designation. Just some of the low Americans or low Soviets might have problems, but everything with 20mm or 25mm just absolutely wrecks you at nearly every distance if they have AP, APIT or HVAP shells at their disposal. So yeah, that is quite something. The first point of the direct comparison is about the mobility, and the FV4005 Stage 2 is quite in the middle between the Tortoise and the FV4004 Conway in this respect, in direct comparison between its predecessor and its successor. So first of all, we have a 647 horsepower engine fully upgraded for a nearly 60-ton tank. That means you have a horsepower to ton ratio of 10.9. That is not really good, but it's also not really bad. Remember, this vehicle has the biggest gun in the game. It does not really need to flank and to ambush the enemy in this respect. And yeah, the top speed is also quite disappointing with 28 kilometers an hour, especially when we see that this is on the basis of the Centurion Mark III. Also, the reverse speed is lower with just -9 kilometers an hour. Furthermore, in this respect, it has, together with all other vehicles except the KV2 1939 and the Type 60 SPRG, neutral steering. So let's take this into the bigger picture. You have a decent amount of horsepower, you have a lot of weight, especially in direct comparison to the Centurion Mark III. That's obviously the gun and the turret and ammunition and so on. Your horsepower to ton ratio is acceptable, I'd say, but your top speed really lets you down a lot, especially on city streets or downhill. You miss literally a gear. I thought at first this is a bug and the driver doesn't shift into the next gear, but it's really the limited top speed. The reverse speed is okayish. It's not as bad as the KV2, especially the neutral steering is important in conjunction with the limited turret traverse speed of 45 degrees to each side. Now we will talk about the firepower, and oh boy do we talk about the firepower. The FV4005 Stage 2 has by far the biggest gun in the game. This massive 183mm QFL4 gun outclasses every other gun in this respect. However, you can see we first of all just have 12 shells of ammunition. Just the Type 60 SPRG has 2 less with just 10, and we also have, together with the KV2 1939, the joint worst reload rate of 33.3 seconds for an A screw. That is astonishing, especially when we compare it to certain to a lot of the rather quick firing vehicles that we want to compare it. First of all, the Conway has nearly twice the rate of fire. The Tortoise has 72% less reload speed, and the Centurion Mark III has 81.1% less of the reload rate. The Sheridan, even with his 152mm M81 launcher/gun, just has half the reload. And even the Yak Tiger, with one of the longest reloads for a rather conventional gun, and its battle rating has 45.3% less reload. But what about the rest of the stats? Well, they are surprisingly okayish for the biggest gun in the game. We have 18.0 degrees of turret rotation speed, but again it's limited, and this is quite the same as on the Conway. The Tortoise has just 10 degrees, but that again is a casemate tank destroyer. The Sheridan has 48, but that's more of a light tank. But then we come into the comparison to the KV2, which has just 6 degrees, the Type 60 SPRG just 10 degrees, and the Yak Tiger left behind with just 5.0 degrees. So for this big gun, derp gun kind of story, this is actually pretty good. I made a little mistake here for the Centurion Mark III. It's obviously also 18 degrees per second. The gun depression, as I mentioned, is also not the worst. -7 degrees is the same as on the Yak Tiger, but it's not really good, it's not really bad, but it never feels like a real drawback for, again, what the vehicle is. 15 degrees of gun elevation is also more than generous. The elevation speed of 4 degrees per second is relatively bad, but it's also better than the KV2 or the Yak Tiger with just 3 degrees respectively. That, you know, you don't have this crazy gun elevation speeds that also profit from kind of a stabilizer like the Conway or the Centurion Mark III seem to have in this respect when you think about 30 degrees of gun elevation speed. That is just crazy. So, but that's not all. Let's talk about the ammunition. The one and only shell type that you have access to in this tank is the Shell L1, which is a HESH shell, high explosive squash head shell. What that actually means, how it exactly works and so on, I will talk a little bit in a moment about. However, let's go through the other stats. 716 meters per second is rather low muzzle velocity. For derp guns, that's not really bad, you know, howitzers and so on. This is, by the way, a long-barreled howitzer. It's practically a gun, but you get the point. 716 meters per second is just half of the APDS speed on the 20-pounder or the L7 gun that you might be used to. But then we come to the magic. The explosive type is the RDX TNT 40-60 ratio, and we have an explosive mass of 12.7 kilograms with a TNT equivalent of 16,260 grams. And this has also improved angles of attack in terms of ricochets. Previously it was around about 25 to 20 degrees where the shells began to bounce. With the new patch this got buffed, so up until 15 degrees of angle of attack you still can reliably bring the shell to detonate. And let's talk about the penetration. 254 millimeters against any angle at any distance makes this tank practically overpowered, especially again at 6.7 battle rating. There is literally no tank that can withstand it, with the exception of certain tanks, and most of them you will find, surprise surprise, in the American tech tree at that battle rating. At higher battle ratings or lower battle ratings you find certain other tanks that can withstand certain hits at certain spots. I will come to this in a moment. First of all, of course, the T95 and the T28, which is the premium version, can take a frontal hit because they have 300 millimeters of armor. Especially also the gun mantle can absorb it because it's not just spaced armor but also 300 millimeters thick. However, then there is the Super Pershing. The hull frontally is, with the exception of the machine gun port, completely invincible to this shell. Even after numerous hits, you cannot penetrate the additional 40 millimeters of armor. The turret is a bit different, and also the T29, and I think also in this respect the T34 can absorb a frontal hit if you hit the hull on the additional added armor platings of the tracks. And that brings me also to the E100, which can absorb the entirety of a hair shell on its side skirts without even getting tracked. However, the shell is so massive and has such a big violence to it, I cannot describe it otherwise, that most other vehicles just simply get one-shotted, and they have to, because you just carry 12 rounds, have such a long reload, and you are that vulnerable. If you don't hit your target in the middle and one-shot it, you might have a long time. And vehicles that you don't one-shot can even repair in the time that you reload and return fire, which is so frustrating if you are kind of trapped in a position. However, there is one more thing that I want to talk about this, and that is the 2 millimeters of fuse sensitivity. Now, you might say, well, there is nothing special, so it's like an HE, it explodes at any contact. Well, in this case it doesn't. All other hash shells that I know of in the game, which are 3, the 90mm on the RE251, all the 105/106mm L7 or recoilless guns in the game, and also the rest of the British 120mm fraction also always have 0 millimeters of fuse sensitivity. That means you can't fire through wooden obstacles, you can't fire through walls, you can't fire through bushes or fences. With this you can. Yes, you have an additional machine gun that you might knock over a fence or something like this, but you also can shoot through. Furthermore, you can hit vehicles that are behind the wall, because the shell has enough fuse delay to go through rather thin walls, and the fuse sensitivity then goes off of course on a wall, but then the shell explodes on the other side of the wall and making a huge rain of shrapnels and of the pure explosion, and that you can one-shot even AAA vehicles behind the wall. I would not rely on this, especially when you screw up the shot. You have 33.3 seconds reload on an A screw, and you just have 12 rounds. So just think about this. Just a short comparison, the shell L1 TK is from the British 120mm fraction that you can find on the Conqueror, the Conway, and also the Chieftain, and the shell L35 that is respectively the representative of all the 105mm L7 variants that you find with various names on various different guns with different names. For example, the M60, M60A1, Leopard 1, Leopard A1A1, STB1 Type 74, and also the SBRG Type 60. So they all have kind of this penetration values, and there is no distinction anymore between British hash and other nations hash in this respect. So around about the same muzzle velocity, but significantly different penetration values, and also here the very important part, the fuse sensitivity of just 0.1 millimeter. So you have 20 times this fuse sensitivity, and that is what makes this gun so powerful, because suddenly you cannot hide behind a bush or a tree or a wooden obstacle anymore and return fire towards this vehicle, while you are practically invulnerable for return fire. So, and this is actually the second battle that I ever played in this vehicle, but before I come to that, here you can see the last data sheet for the tank review for today, and that is a shell comparison between all the tanks that I just compared up until this point. And you can see there is not too much that the FV4005 Stage 2 has access to. Again, just this one shell type, but you can see how powerful it is, especially with the TNT equivalent. So, that is Abandoned Factory. I have no idea what it is about Abandoned Factory, but I seem to make every vehicle work on this map, at least for, you know, my standards, so to speak. And as I mentioned before, this is the second battle that I ever played. So since then I had a lot more upgrades, but again it points out how few upgrades you actually need to make this vehicle work. You just need the fire prevention equipment, and you just need the repair kit. The crew replenishment module is something again that you really need. Later on, mobility aspects, and of course the precision upgrades for the gun are important, but they are not essential, and that is a big difference, for example, towards other vehicles. So this is a corner fight, and this is something that I usually don't like to have. So I'm thinking about retreating, especially with this IS-2 standing here on the edge. This Panther 2, this Panther also turns around. I think it's a Panther G. And yeah, an RE-251 got killed. The IS-2 reverses. So you can see I'm playing very cautiously. Again, it's the limited turret traverse angle that you have. It's not really bad, but you know, for a real corner fight, it's not good. And the IS-2 gets taken out by a Tiger E. Yes, you fight on a regular basis tigers in this thing. I know. Technically the Tiger has no problems dealing with this thing, but still, it's not fair. I think this is one of those vehicles that just doesn't care about the battle rating and the enemy it faces. On the other hand, every enemy can kill this. Especially when you up tier it to 8.0, or even in a normal up tier where you face the SU-100 and 2254 or the T-10M with the 14.5mm machine guns. They just shred you regardless of how you angle your turret. It just, my heart bled for a moment here when I one-shot this Tiger H1, but hey, that's your matchmaker, buddy. Lucky you, yeah? I hope you heard the sarcasm. Yeah, this vehicle is just blasting somebody in the face and then just getting the hell out of there. You just have literally not a huge amount of protection. And again, in the previous clips you saw how long it takes to reload, how careful you have to be with your positioning. And yeah, you do not always one-shot your enemies. In this case, luck was not with me. Normally, certain German tanks in particular always blow up, especially when I drive them and I get shot in the fuel tank. But not if you shoot them with a 183mm gun when I drive them. That's just my personal luck. I swear to you that must be me. It must be me. Yeah, so again, I wait a long time for the reload, At that point I look around if somebody is around, and then I take my chances. And then I set him on fire again. Now, normally I expect him to have a fire extinguisher, but it seems like that he burned down, or the T-3485 put a shot into him and then he just gave up, or the kill was awarded to me. And then now you can see the key aspect of tactical point of view of this vehicle. You care about teammates and they care about you, and teammates are very important for you. They cover your retreat while you reload. They are a distraction for the enemy, so you can have a jump on them. And yeah, they also spot you and maybe even catch the shell for you. Yeah, one very disappointing fact about the FV4005 Stage 2 is the gun sound. It's the same as on the Conqueror or the Conway. I expected something different. Not necessarily more brutal or something, but different. So we have the capture point and I'm going through this wall. Again, I have no idea how, if I could shoot through that, but I guess such a concrete wall counts like 2 millimeters of armor. I did not try my luck. Again, you could test for days everything and you just couldn't give a final answer. Now I finally one-shotted the tank, or a tiger, by giving him a shot in the back of the turret, and that was my 3rd kill. So, and again we wait and reload. We take our time observing the surrounding. If there is something there, yes, there seems to be a panther. I had it in line of sight before I even shot at the tiger, but the tiger was the closest target and I did not expect this panther having a good go at me. And I aim and I shoot and I one-shot him, and you could see the shrapnel pattern was enormous, from the back of the turret right into the back of the head of the driver, killing 4 out of the 5 crew members of the Panther crew and giving me my 4th kill. And again, we just wait in this position. We were actually on the front line. Yeah, this is frontline camping at its finest. I'm not joking. This is how you do it. You wait in ambush. And then I observe my squad member, how he burns down or gets taken out by a Panther G. I'm not quite sure if he was finished or literally burned down. He did not seem to have any fire extinguisher or any fire extinguisher left. Then I hear a plane, and yeah, I'm really not looking forward to encounter planes. And he was shot down, so good result right there. So at this point, I was thinking to myself, what should I do? Okay, I just can a little bit defend the cap. Then I hear an engine behind me and I see the kill message that the Whirlwind got bombed. Mate, if you get bombed in a AAA, you're doing it wrong. Alright? Why is no AAA ever shooting at planes when you hear them and you see them? Especially in a German AAA. But I digress. That's just me. The Bearcat gets taken out by a fucking wolf. And now I'm taking my chances. I actually want to do a little bit more. So you can see I'm nearly halfway through my ammunition and I did not really shoot that much. On the other hand, I have to say, effectively I never ran into ammunition problems because I never got to fire the last round. Practically every shot is a kill. If I play this vehicle right, I obviously will at some point run into very extraordinary situations and then I complain about how few shells do I have, but then I get shot maybe and I have to go into a cap circle to refill my crew members in the first place, crew replenishment. But you know, then you obviously refill 1 or 2 shells in the first place, and that's enough to take out 2 or 3 enemies. So I heard that there is a AAA in the building, I see it, and I shoot through the bush and eliminate this Dickermax. And then, oh no, I reverse, but it's not fast enough. He sees me, it's an Ostwind, and that's it. A few shell hits were enough. I got avenged immediately, but yeah, that was a crew knockout in the turret. It was again not the shells, but the match ended, so I did not see the end of the match, at least alive in this tank. Let's have a quick look at the post-battle results, and we can see that for our 5 kills, 2 critical hits, I just got 26,600 silver lines and 3,006 modification research points, and I was 6th in team with 1,205 score points, or was I 5th? It doesn't matter. You do not really get high scores with it, but it's more of the regular income that you have. I have to say, if you have something in line of sight, you shoot it, you usually get the kill. The last thing that I want to mention about this vehicle is that if you want a very unique experience, play it. But if you really want to play competitively, this might be the worst vehicle in the game, because after that it takes a while to get back to play a normal tank. I swear to you, you just might you forget about weak spots, you forget about proper positioning as you count on the first strike capability. The shell performs extraordinary. I have never driven such an easy skill tank in this respect. You point and click. It's strange. Again, not very good in arcade because of the lack of mobility, the lack of maneuverability, the lack of protection, and you get obviously focused down by everybody because everybody sees the name and they focus you like there is no tomorrow. They want to get rid of the danger, and they also smell the easy kill. So you know what you're getting yourself into. In realistic, you kind of have the ambush advantage if you play right, and in this respect, I could talk about this vehicle for days. So that's it for me today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. If you liked this video, please give it a like, it helps out the channel greatly. Subscribe if you want to see more. Let me know in the comment section your experiences with this tank. Does it have the wrong battle rating, or is it balanced because of how vulnerable it is? Let me know, I'm very interested in your opinion. And so there is nothing left for me to say, as we will see each other on the battlefields of War Thunder.